Hello and welcome to Gabbitt Media. I'm Gabbitt and today I'm going to show you how I made the Learn icon for the game Atlas Empires. So it's keeping with the low poly style, but in terms of poly count and textures, I didn't have to worry too much because it's just an icon. You can find out more about Atlas Empires in the link in the description. I believe the release date is February. And do also check out the description for all the playlists related to Atlas Empires and learning about texture painting and lots of other playlists that are on my channel. So you can see me making the scroll. I did miss a tiny section out of this. I missed a couple of bits with this actually, unfortunately. So I'll try and fill in those bits that I missed. I just forgot to press record. But you can see the original scroll that I made. I thought I'd make it by using a sort of coil method and all that sort of stuff. Actually, it was a screw modifier, isn't it? But I didn't really like how it looked, so I thought I'd go for the chunky scroll look instead. So you can see me making that. The only awkward bit of the model was that tiny bit of paper sticking out of the scroll. Everything else will be drawn in, so the shadows will be drawn in by hand and all the highlights drawn in by hand, so you don't have to worry about making it separate pieces of paper inside, coiled up and things like that, which I did in the original one. I was just kind of using that as a reference, really. Then you can see I deleted it there because it's unnecessary. All of this is fairly basic stuff, really, fairly basic modelling. As I always say, try and keep it really simple when you're doing low poly work and you're going to do the hand painting afterwards. The main thing to think about is the silhouette and will it look right from all different angles. Then you get all the rest of the detail when you're painting. When I'm doing something like this sort of ribbon cloth thing on the edge there, I just use a plane and then use the solidify modifier. Then I apply that at the end before painting. You can't really paint on a modifier, so you have to apply all your modifiers and things. Well, mirror modifiers you can, actually, to be fair. So making a sort of potion bottle, that's kind of fun. I've actually got beginner exercises on that, so if you want to check those out, then have a look at my channel. It's a playlist of beginner exercises, and so I was doing this and thought that would be a good exercise. Now I know that glass is very hard to hand paint, so I was going to do this as just a normal sort of procedural texture using the glass node, and I probably render with cycles. I find Eevee a little bit awkward when it comes to glass. There's lots of things you can do in Eevee to make it look a bit better, but it's just easier to do it in cycles as this was going to be a single image. The inside of the potion bottle, so the actual sort of liquid, I just use the outside mesh, grab a few faces from it, duplicate it, scale it down and then fill it in. So it keeps the shape of the outside mesh that way. So pretty happy with the shape here and just figuring out texturing now. So looking at glass textures, and I was using Eevee to start off with, but then moved across to cycles because I felt it was a bit better really. If I'm honest, I get a bit confused with the Eevee glass and the transmission setting. I don't know whether they've changed it recently or decided to make things different to how they were originally in 2.8 with the first release of 2.8 as opposed to 2.81, but it just seems really odd and behave a bit unnaturally, especially when it comes to the refraction, which is why I thought I'd do it all in cycles rather than in Eevee. But obviously Eevee's useful to get a preview, so I'm still got it on here. So obviously I didn't have to unwrap the bottles, but I'm unwrapping the scroll and the other parts. It's nice not having to worry too much about how they're separated onto the maps, and they can be on different maps as well, it doesn't matter. Because this is just an icon, I don't need to think too much about the polygon count or texture calls. But usually I would unwrap all these objects, apart from the glass that is, onto one texture map. It's nice actually not having to hand paint the glass. That's always a really tricky one to do. So at this point I'm just positioning them so I'm nice and happy with the shape. I start thinking about it and thinking about the ribbon that's falling off from the scroll and thinking actually it's going to be floating in midair, so I won't need to do that. I did actually decide to put them all on one map. I forgot that I did that now. I'm now looking at the screen. Again, it doesn't really make much difference because it's not going to be seen in game, so it's not going to need those texture calls. It is just an icon. Here you can see me setting up ready for painting. I have done a live stream just the other day, and I was doing this entire process with a different icon. So if you're interested in seeing that whole entire process in detail with people asking questions as well, it does take a lot longer like that, but it was good fun. So if you want to watch that, then do check out the recent video on the live stream. You can see all the live streams as well, they're all on a playlist. I'm trying to organise the channel a bit more, so do check out the playlist area within the channel, and then you can get all the different courses and things like that, and you can see all the different detailed videos and things as groups. It's a much easier way to navigate the channel. I do find that about YouTube. It's a bit of a pain, actually, that you can't have a sort of navigation system that's better than playlists. So here I am painting the scroll. It's fairly straightforward. It's sort of yellowy, burnt colour. I've done that before with the paper that was in the information section. So this is the learn icon, and that was the info icon. But that had paper in it, so I've had a bit of experience now. I'm going slightly away from using the multiply brush. I do use it still, and the screen brush as well, but I try and get the colours correct. So the problem with the multiply brush and the screen brush is it will keep making it lighter or darker. So the more you paint, the more it will change the colour. Whereas if you choose an actual colour and you start painting with that, it's always only going to go to that colour's strength. So it's probably a better way to manage your drawings, and that's how I prefer to paint. It was only recently that someone told me you can just press S rather than S and click over your painting to sample a colour, and just to change the colour rather than actually add it to the palette, because I ended up getting loads of extra colours that I didn't need in my palette, and it was a big pain. But if you just press S, it will just sample the colour and it won't add it to your palette. But if you press S and left click, so tap with your graphics tablet, then that will add it to your palette. You can see for this sort of, what is this bit around the scroll, but that bit around the scroll, trying to give it a sort of slightly leathery texture. I'm not really sure what I was doing there, but I was looking at reference images and I couldn't really work out what they use. Some use ribbons, some use sort of thick sort of leather and things, so I just went for something in between, it feels like. This stuff is sort of waxy, so that was quite fun, doing a waxy texture. I hadn't done anything like that before, so I was painting on a bit of the subsurface scattering. So around the edges, I tried to make it a lot lighter. So using the screen brush, so it would push out those reds into the sort of orange area and the yellows. And that seemed to work quite well. I quite enjoyed doing that, as if the light was reflecting off it and shining through it, as you get with wax. Wax is quite an important one to have subsurface scattering. In fact, if you put too much subsurface scattering onto an object, it can look really waxy. So yes, light shines through wax quite a lot, so you want to get that sort of glow to your object. And then onto this sort of ribbon texture. That's quite fun as well, because ribbon has that sort of velvety sheen to it, so you've got to try and get that that sheen in the hand-drawn style, and it sort of wobbles across the surface, especially if it's cloth, because it has lots of different creases, so that's quite a fun thing to do. I don't know, there's those slightly little challenging things are great fun. I quite enjoyed painting the cork as well. I'm really getting into the hand painted even more. It's always something I've been really into, but the more I do it, I suppose the better I get, so the results are always appealing, so you just keep going and you enjoy it more. So stick with it if you're a beginner, and the better you get, the more exciting, the more fun you're going to have with it. So with the cork texture, giving it those sort of dents and holes and scrapes and scratches, and then sort of highlighting the edges, highlighting the top as well, as if the light's coming down from the top, painting in the ambient occlusion again. So generally the same sort of techniques, but slightly different each time for different objects. Hopefully that made sense. Here I'm making the bubbles that are coming out of the potion bottle. And again, just having a bit of fun testing things out. It was a little bit of an interesting one, trying to get the right texture for bubbles. I haven't really done that before, so I got it fairly close. I wasn't too worried to spend loads of time on this, because it's going to be a relatively small icon really, but I thought I'd test a few things out with the bubbles and see what I could get up to with the Eevee, but went across the cycles anyway in the end. If you've seen my video about where I make the environment, you can see me talking about putting things in threes. So there's 3 bubbles there. It's supposed to be more aesthetically pleasing to the eye, so putting things in threes is quite a good idea. And there's 2 potion bottles and a scroll, so there's 3 items there, so sort of makes sense. So now just setting up the camera, adding the denoise because we've got cycles on. I don't really do much with the denoise. Someone was asking me about my settings the other day, but I just plug it in. If it's not working, then I put up the samples really slightly. But again, I haven't really tested much with that. I haven't done any animations yet to find out what it's like. And now just a little bit of lighting to give it that glow around the bottles, and you can see the final result there. Quite happy with how it turned out. Once again, it's good fun doing these things. Do let me know in the comments below if you've got any thoughts and opinions, and do check out my other playlists, the live stream as well, if you want to see it in detail. Thanks for all those that actually get this far as well. I do really appreciate that. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.